things in a very, very small scale. Can I reduce the setup time by 60 seconds? Can I stage that material closer to my operator by maybe 5 feet, just so it can eliminate those 2 or 3 steps? So think of it as a state of mind, requires participation by everybody. The Kaizen event is, though, a very accelerated improvement effort, and it could go from 1 to 5 days, where actual changes are made and implemented. And this is per your APICS dictionary. But the improvements are small in scope generally, but they're done on a regular basis. There's a bias towards action. When you're in a Kaizen event, there's no room for people who are on the sidelines. It really requires everybody rolling up their sleeves, not analyzing everything to the extreme, but making best judgments, using information that we know, and marching forward. It's probably the most powerful way that I have found to operationalize training, specifically Lean Six Sigma training, continuous improvement training. So the ideal time for Kaizen events, there's the waste elimination Kaizen. There's an error proofing Kaizen. How do we prevent errors? We've got lead time reduction. How do we shorten the lead time for delivering a shipment? There's visual management Kaizens. How do we see better on the workplace floor? My guidance is to keep that first Kaizen event simple and focused. And these are 4 very, very specific types of Kaizen events to help you understand and grasp that. So when we say a waste Kaizen, clearly anything that focuses on eliminating or reducing the muda, the waste. And more officially, we define it anything that does not create value or add value to the good or the service in the eyes of your customer. Now, that customer could be the end user, or it could be an internal customer, the next station down in the process. And waste Kaizens are one of the best catalysts for getting the momentum going in an organization. And here are those familiar 8 wastes, that acronym known as Downtime. These are where most of the problems occur, and it is very, very effective if you use this template to discuss it with your team. Where are you seeing mistakes, errors, or waiting?
You know, Peter, what else I've seen? I like that acronym. It's easier to remember. I've also seen, what's the other one? Tim Woods. Tim Woods. Wood. Yeah.
Yes.
So those are neat things. It helps you remember.
Yes.
That's also a key APICS concept there. The 7, or well, when I was studying it was 7. Now it's 8.
Now it's 8. The 8th one is this non-utilization of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very insidious form of waste because it takes the form of not challenging your team to their highest and best use, not listening to them. And when people don't feel like they have a voice or they're in the wrong role, they usually start to check out. And they start checking the boxes and not really paying attention. And sometimes it could result in a missed label, packing the wrong SKU, maybe storing that inventory in the wrong bin, or even worse, an accident. So that utilization of talent is a very insidious form of waste. The error-proofing Kaizen, or what is known as the Poka-yoke techniques, we want to eliminate the errors, any chance of making an error. And here's those typical ways we could do this. Focus on reducing handoffs, because when you have a handoff, something's prone to getting lost. Combining steps. about 15, 20 years ago, to order a book on Amazon took you about 15 clicks, if you think about it. And remember, you had to enter your name, your address, your billing credit card, this product you wanted. Today, it's just one click. Simple checklists are great to prevent mistakes. Creating some standard work, the fundamental, the bedrock of a predictable, repeatable process. And then what we tend to relate to error proofing, those poka-yoke techniques. And I'll share a couple of them with you. I was sending my printer some instructions on a Greenbelt curriculum. Attached are the updated Lean Six Sigma Greenbelt modules. Let me know if you have any questions. And when I sent it, I got the pop-up on the first one here. And unfortunately, it did not show here, but basically it would prevent me from sending out a email without.
Oh, you mean if it recognizes there's not something attached, it'll tell you that?
Yes, and
that's neat. Yeah.
We commonly see this with Gmail.
Yeah.
Can anyone tell me what the mistake proofing is on the right here with this drop-down menu?
And the Excel spreadsheet,
Yes.
My guess it's can I try? I don't want to steal. My guess it's limiting the options that you can enter as opposed to a free form, which could be anything. Was that?
Yeah, free form text is the bane of analysts all over the world, right? Inventory analysts, sales and operational planning. Now, take a look at this photograph and tell me if anyone can understand what this is a photograph of and what is it preventing?
Well, I'm a warehouse person, so I'm going to say it has something to do with the docks.
Okay. You're right on that.
I'll let somebody else see if that's a clue. And I see a red and a green. I assume those would be lights.
Now, I don't know if anyone's sending in emails to you, Chris, or.
Well, I suppose if I were looking, I would know. Oh, okay, I see. You're right. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, I see someone.
Yeah. Okay.
So I see a few chats here. It's a dock lock. That's right.
Richard Burns. Richard got it right.
Yes, to prevent that trailer from slipping away from the loading dock and someone plunging, maybe in a forklift.
Mm-hmm. I've seen YouTube videos about that.
Here's the lead time reduction Kaizen. How do we reduce that lead time from when the customer calls in with the order to the time it's delivered? And we can reduce lead time through a lot of different ways, similar to the Kaizen or the poka-yoke, eliminating those handoffs, combining steps, positioning all of the things that our operators need closer to where they need to be. Leveraging one-piece flow to create a better flow through and acceleration of those products. The use of Kanban or pull systems so that we have the right balance in place between not overproducing or one station not producing enough. And just a little bit more detail in terms of Kanban, think of it as a communication flow of resources, whether it's information, materials, and the trigger tells you what to replace. And it could apply to materials, parts, information. And I've seen this now utilized more and more in the software development field. So if you think about it as a schematic, how Kanban works, here's the flow. Here's your inbox and here's your output. The only condition where any station should be doing work is when their inbox is full and their outbox has already been emptied out. In other words, the person next in line has taken it out to work on it. And the schematic here on the right shows you physically in, say, a fulfillment center, how these three operators should be working. And when you have really good Kanban, it enables that one piece flow, but actually accelerates because you get an even flow of material going through the system. A visual management Kanban, improving the flow of activities, material through visual techniques, labeling, maybe some simple color coding, a metrics board, the use of andon lights, safety tape on floors, and of course, Kanban itself could be used as a visual technique. In fact, the old school Kanbans, where you're using a card that's maybe colored a red or a bright yellow, really do work. So technology does not have to be required necessarily to achieve this. 5S is also another way to visually improve your work environment, whether it's a warehouse or a distribution center. So these are techniques to apply. So now that we've described at least 4 types of Kaizen events, let's move into the actual steps to conduct your first Kaizen. Step 1, the preparation. I believe this is the most critical stage. And in this stage, our team leaders should start planning and scoping for that event by asking some very basic questions. What's the purpose of this event? What are we going to accomplish? What process are we going to target, or what part of that value stream do we need to look at? Is it the order to cash value stream, or is it a specific section, maybe in the pulling the bill of the BOM, for example, the bill of materials? What do we expect in terms of success out of this Kaizen? How are we going to measure it? Who should be on the team? We want the right stakeholders who are going to be engaged to be able to orchestrate it. The second key part of the prep involves the problem statement. And problem statements can be very, very challenging. And many times people can get wrapped around the axle because everyone defines a problem in their own way, from their own experience. And you could result, sometimes you could be successful, but a lot of times you will find that you'll be bogged down in just recycling. People get off track. These are the questions that you should start asking yourself about a problem statement. What is occurring? Or what's not happening that should be happening? Where in the process is the problem occurring, or where is it occurring in our product SKUs? Where is it geography-wise? Who is the problem impacting? Is it our external customers? If so, what are they experiencing? Or maybe it's our internal customers as well, and what are they going through? When did the problem start occurring? Was it the last quarter when we made a change to our inventory management system, or was it been going on for, say, the past 24 months? And finally, how much? We call it the universe of impact. How often does this issue occur, maybe in a week? How many people are involved in it when it does happen? How much time are they spending trying to rework it, fix it? And how much are they being paid? What's their wage? And then we're going to extrapolate that over a full year. And it might be in terms of cost or lost productivity, maybe poor quality. The one thing we have to be really aware of is we don't want to start solutioning nor trying to understand why at this juncture. Just lay out those symptoms of the problem. And here is what we call a problem statement framework. And it's just 2 sentences, but these 2 sentences are extremely rich. During the period of time, the process within our business has been experiencing X, Y, or Z. We're averaging 88% on-time arrival when our goal is 95%. The problem is impacting, and then we get into the who, and it's generating all of those symptoms that you normally associate with problems. Generally, they involve rework or overtime, scrap, penalties, maybe lost business, and it's costing us some amount of money or other metric. This simple problem statement framework can really bring clarity to understanding the nature of the problem so that you come into the Kaizen event very, very clear and the team is clear. And generally, I like to share the problem statement with the team to get full sign off before stepping foot in the Kaizen. Now, along with the problem statement, we've got to have a goal. The goal addresses that issue in the problem statement. And when we're talking about a goal here, we want to maybe formulate some hypothesis. If we change something in our business, what could we achieve? And it's usually beneficial to be specific. Quantify your expected performance if you made a certain change or you added something to this project or process. Now, how do you know what could be your expected goal? Well, you could look at historical experience. Maybe somewhere along the line, you were able to achieve that 95% on-time delivery, but over the years, something happened and it started to deteriorate. Maybe do a little competitor benchmarking. Utilize the APICS or ASCM to help you with some industry benchmarks. I like to use a stretch goal when all else fails. If I see we're not compliant with getting the right SKU, the right mix, the right address, and I see it's a 10% defect rate, I just like to cut it in half, a stretch goal. Now, without timing, goals can be very, very elusive. So you've got to get that time in. Now, in terms of a framework for goals, I like to use that familiar acronym, the SMART goals. Make it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And here is a simple goal framework for you to use. Our goal is to increase or decrease. And at the end of the day, it probably will be one or two of those verbs. You want to increase on-time delivery, decrease overtime. Very rarely are you going to say maintain. The specific metrics from the current baseline, where we are today, to the goal by the certain target date. The second sentence tells your team and your management what is the potential to achieve if you do this. And here's where you can get into, we would project the following benefits, whether it's financial, productivity, or customer satisfaction. So the goal. Now, along with the goal, we have to have a scope. And this is where Kaizen events can quickly get very, very challenging. Scopes of work that are just too big to take on. So be very clear about the boundaries and avoid scope creep. Now, this term scope creep, is that familiar to, or is that unfamiliar to anyone? scope creep.
It's familiar.
Think of it.
I thought it was
Yes.
that person that was following me around at the store the other day. No, somebody said it. Somebody said it was familiar before. Who said that?
So like going down a rabbit hole.
Oh.
Yes. Was that Marcus?
Yes.
Marcus, going down a rabbit hole. That's right. You know, getting distracted. Chris wanted to go to, his wife told him to go to Publix for some butter, milk, eggs, and Chris comes back with, you know, donuts, Cheetos, Coca-Cola.
Yes.
It just scoped out, it creeped out, and it results in a lot of indigestion. So to help you prevent the scope creep, understand, where does the process start? Where does it end? What does it include? And of course, what does it exclude? Which is, answering the last two, you might say are redundant, but when you ask it, what does it include and exclude, you're doing a good sanity check. And here's a simple framework around a scope. The scope of this project will be that specific process. Maybe it's the order entry process. It'll start when a order comes in, and it will end when the order has been acknowledged to the customer. Maybe that's your scope. It will not include fulfilling that order. We're just going to focus on from the request to the acknowledgement. So let me just take a pause here on the problem statement, the goal, and the scope, because I know this is a lot of material. Any thoughts or questions?
Well, as a project management, if somebody does want to change, let's say, expand the scope, there is a change process that can manage those.
Well, I'm having a hard time hearing that.
Adam, yeah, Adam, I think you're far from the mic.
You can't hear me that well still?
It comes and goes.
All right. Let me, never mind. I've got to switch to a different computer. This one has had a mic problem. That's why I'm getting a new computer.
So Peter, what were you asking again? Examples or
if anyone had questions.
questions?
Okay.
I have a question. What is SIPOC?
Ah, okay. Well, this is
softball.
Yes, this is a way to help also scope out your problem, your project. And the SIPOC stands for suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and customers. And it's a very, very powerful way to understand the process at a high level and scope it appropriately. And here is the mechanics of the SIPOC. So think of in steps. Step one, in the middle, we want to describe the process. And maybe the process is the fulfillment process or put away. It starts here at step two, and it ends here at two. And so maybe the start is the fulfillment starts with an order, and it ends with shipping. Okay, so those are our two bookends that we're going to keep in scope. At that point, you want to elevate yourself 30,000 feet and look at the process in terms of what we call the value stream, number 3. What are the key steps involved in this order to ship process at the fulfillment company? Well, maybe it's the order entry. Then we pick it, pack it, label it, ship it. Key steps. Step 4 is to identify those outputs that are generated from the SIPOC. And it could be one way that I like to do it is at each step, what is an output? So after the order comes in, is there some kind of an output? Well, sure, there's probably a pick sheet and a order confirmation with the customer's name and address. The next question is who receives that output? And maybe it's the supervisor in the fulfillment center. Step 6 is to look at the inputs, all of the things such as hardware, software, tools, information that go into this process. And maybe one of those key pieces of information is, well, we're going to need the customer name, address, and credit card information to be able to trigger an order, and their address. In that case, the supplier is the customer. And this helps us put together what I call a blueprint of your process. It shows you visually, you and the team, all of the moving parts. And it's very, very effective on the front end in the prep to take some time to map this out. So some tips on scoping. Don't boil the ocean. Try to stay focused on a single problem. Concentrate on one KPI. Maybe it's on-time delivery. Consider your, what I call your span of control or your sphere of influence. If you are dealing with a third party and it's going to be very difficult to affect change on your project, maybe you table that for another project. I like to work on scopes that I can have an effect on, an influence. I like to target projects that can be scoped preferably well within 90 days. In fact, your first Kaizen should be a 1 week outcome. Within 1 week or less, you should be seeing the KPI move in the right direction if you're orchestrating it right. When I'm scoping out the projects for Kaizen, I like to focus on issues that involve process changes. Process changes, my M&Ps, method and procedures, policies, training. These types of process changes are generally much easier to implement. They don't really require a lot of capital, and you're able to generate a significant return on your investment. So process changes is where I usually like to look at. And the last tip, try not to come in with any predisposed solutions. And this is tough because human nature is hardwired to want to fix something. And that's just in our nature, and it's actually a good trait. But when you're working on a project like this, you definitely don't want to be going down a path that could be the wrong path. So try to remove the bias. Come in with an open mind. And I'm sure there's other tips that folks in this webinar have, but these are just the basics. Now, once you've got the problem mapped out, the goal, the scope, you've used the SIPOC, you've got to pull together that team. And the right mix of team members can have an incredible effect on your success or mediocrity with a Kaizen event. The rule that I like is called the thirds rule. It's a really good guiding principle for structuring and balancing the team. And the thirds rule looks like this. Generally, it's beneficial to have a third of my team from the front line. These are the folks that know the job the best. They're dealing with it day in and day out. I like to have a third of the management team or supervisors, people who probably were in the frontline role, but now they're in a position of making decisions, being able to manage a group of people. And the last third is my support team. So think of this as maybe your inventory management specialists or someone from IT, maybe finance. And this 1/3 rule really creates a very, very good balanced composite to generate that high performing team. Now, if you're lucky or fortunate, you might bring in the customer. And when you bring in a customer into your Kaizen event, it serves as the great level setter. The customer is not really concerned with, anyone's personal issues or impacts to their particular step. The customer just wants that expectation, right? So think about trying to bring in a friendly customer, someone who can keep that Kaizen on focus. So with teams, the guidelines for selection, definitely bring in the folks who are working in the process. That goes without saying. Look at your SIPOC. Who's supplying the inputs? Who's the recipient of those outputs? The customers. By looking at it in this fashion, you've got the entire value stream. And it's important you got the right representation. Your facilitator for Kaizens is someone who should bring some very, very strong skills in communication, organization, being able to raise the level of decision-making with the group, not letting a problem derail the progress or momentum. That ability to deal with uncertainty, because there's going to be uncertain issues that come up. We'll never have perfect information, but that facilitator has got to be able to keep the ball rolling. And it doesn't have to be a black belt or an expert in process improvement. Could be someone who's just got very, very good project management experience, the good communication skills. The other key member is your champion. And the champion could be the team lead. It could be a manager who wants this Kaizen or this project improved, or maybe it's the executive. And the champion can help you remove any roadblocks, help you get the resources you need, ask the tough questions. And one of those tough questions that your champion should ask you is, hey, Chris, or hey, Adam, how do you know that that's true? And if your champion asked you that question, how would you respond? How do you know that that's true, Chris or Adam?
That's a question. You caught me. Say it again. How would I know if I'm qualified?
Yeah, how do you know that that's true? You said that the shrinkage in the warehouse is upwards of 10%. How do you know that's true?
Gut feel, I would say, for me. Just maybe I'm guessing.
Adam?
Well, sorry.
Because he's
Sorry,
omnipotent.
that's
He's
me working on
omnipotent.
two computers.
He's the Oz.
I would say probably there's some safety stock that went down, or there's a bullwhip effect that I'm not aware of that's causing something to occur. And these are just ideas I'm throwing out. There's so many variables that could come into place, even like Chris said, just a gut feel even, but I would say there would be some sort of a metric that I'm basing that on.
Maybe even more simpler. If Chris or Chris said, hey, we've got a 10% shrinkage rate in our warehouse. 10% of our product is walking out the door. We're losing money. And your champion asked you, well, hey, Chris or Adam, how do you know that that's true?
Mm-hmm.
What would be at the very, very, okay, so I'm seeing here the data. So is that, looks like a gentleman like Robert Perkins, or the
Where
data?
do you see the data? They must be talking to you.
It's in the chat.
Oh, I agree.
The data, yeah, we observed,
Data.
we looked at the warehouse. We saw that we've got the shrinkage here. Not that we think it or we guess it. That's what a good champion will do to help you be successful before you hit the ground floor on the Kaizen event.
Okay, we got all these Memphis people getting the right answers. What's going on over there?
Yes.
I
But
tried to say them, look at the metric, but maybe that was when the echo effect happened. Yeah, Memphis people are pretty smart there, Chris. Don't be hating on
Yeah, we're gonna have to limit their number of attendees here. I don't know what's going on.
Wow.
But we've got
Okay.
about
So now let's see what an agenda might look like for your first Kaizen event. And here's a mock-up. So day one, some introductions kick off. I usually like to re-articulate the goals and objectives, and probably the problem statement along with that. And maybe take a look at your project charter, which is just a more formalized document. In the first day, I find that some training is usually much appreciated, and it helps people all understand the terminology that we'll be using, some of the fundamental techniques. And it doesn't have to be formal training. It could be on just the 8 wastes. In the afternoon of the first day is when we start to understand the current state. And when I say map the current state, it's the team mapping it as they know it, and the facilitator just maybe putting the yellow stickies on that whiteboard. But let the team own it. And usually I'll start off in the mapping with the very high level key steps. So for example, in this fulfillment, we know there's an order entry, a pick, pack it, label it, and ship it. And then I will step back and I said, okay, we've got this laid out here. Now I want you all to start to fill in the details of how that order flows into the system. Where's the decision gates? And when you have the team start to map it out the way they know it, that's when you start to see the real understanding of the current state. Because generally, there's not much consensus going on of how things flow, how things are decided. And those are your opportunities to seize on. An alternative to that mapping is to take 3 folks, one a very newcomer to the operation, 2 an intermediate, or 3rd a very experienced professional, and just have them using yellow stickies identify what are the key steps to go from order to ship in this warehouse. And at the end of that, stack them up vertically, and invariably you're going to see the variation. Your experienced pros know the shortcuts. They've been there a long time. They know how to get things done, but maybe they're not doing them in the right sequence. Your newcomers may be following the strict SOPs, and maybe someone in the middle is doing a hybrid. That is a very, very excellent way to help get skin in the game, because now people see, oh no, we're all doing it differently. At the start of day 2, I like to start the gap analysis. Let's identify all of those redundancies, the bottlenecks, the time traps, the inconsistencies. Where's the waste? And maybe start to quantify them in terms of, all right, well, how long does it take you to actually do that particular step? How much inventory has been building up on the in between these steps? And if you don't know, take the team out and go to the Gemba, go right on the floor to observe it. What's my yield? So these are the metrics that tell us how bad we're doing. In the afternoon of day 2, I like to shift into the root cause analysis. And the RCA analysis or framework really works. And I'll go through some of those key tools to help us dig down to the root cause. That frees up everybody for the day 3. And when you do some very, very thorough root cause analysis, in other words, you're drilling down, peeling the onion, the countermeasures, the solutions, the interventions are going to be very, very self-apparent. And the 3rd day in the morning, people are fresh, and you could start to design that future state. What should this process look like? Brainstorm those ideas, evaluate them, select them. And in that day 3, the ability to design and implement those changes becomes very, very powerful. And one thing I learned in Japan is don't get hung up in perfection. Instead of welding something, bolt it. If you can't bolt something, put it together with a C-clamp to create that particular mock-up. Don't let perfection stand in your way of trying to prove you can move the needle on the dial. A simple 1-2 step-by-step process or job aid falls in that same camp. And this is key because your momentum has to be maintained. And if you're able to demonstrate the change on the floor during the Kaizen event, your odds of success go up exponentially. It's just human nature. When people see that something is helping them, making their job easier, they're having a say-so in how it's been designed and identified as the root cause, they're more likely to stick with it. In the afternoon, we like to identify those next steps because there's always going to be things that have to be done, and then close that Kaizen out with the team and celebrate, because Kaizen events are fairly intense. Now, not necessarily to follow this agenda, but by and large, you could see the pattern here: current state, analysis, future state. Comments, questions?
My question is, could you, I mean, Peter, you mentioned, having a facilitator. Could that be an external person as well? I mean, like you could come in and help companies get started with this?
It could be an external facilitator. That's entirely feasible.
That's what I was thinking. So now,
yes.
So if you came in, and I'm not plugging, I'm just thinking out loud. If you came in, would you do the change, or would you facilitate the change and train people how to do it, or how does that work?
All right, hold on to that question because I wanted to share you the actual case study.
Well, we've only got a couple minutes, 2 minutes
okay.
left. I want to give some Q&A.
Yes. All right, so we've got a few minutes. So step 2, the training. Now, training is not an absolute requirement, but some sort of training may be required just to level set with the team. And it could be just-in-time training, something simple like the 8 wastes. So here are some topics. I'm not going to get into the detail. Here's my current state mapping, and this is definitely a good topic for training. This RCA framework, I would say, is one of the most fundamental types of techniques so folks can really understand the problem statement, the current state, the causes, the solutions, and the verification. All right, implementation. Implementation involves collecting data, mapping out that process, reviewing the problem statement, mapping it out, doing your gap analysis. And I like to use the old severity frequency matrix when I'm trying to find those very, very high priority items. When I'm doing root cause analysis, these are the most fundamental tools: the Pareto charts, the old fishbone diagrams coupled with the 5 whys. Sometimes we get into control charts, relations diagrams, one of the best tools to actually draw cause and effect. Sometimes we've got a lot of data and it lends itself to a scatter plot or maybe a dot plot. Fifth step is to design that future state. How should this process flow? The number of steps. And when I'm trying to design a future state, using a PIC chart or a cost benefit analysis is usually very, very helpful. Let me just continue.
Yeah, we're at 7 o'clock. I told everybody we'd be done at 7. So
Okay.
we gotta pull it.
Yes, the follow-up. The follow-up is very, very key because you don't want to lag on any of the action items and visually showing a process of what you did. Now, this is the Kaizen case study. In 2017, I facilitated a Kaizen event for a mid-sized manufacturer of industrial belts here in the Southeast. This was the scenario. The plant was experiencing a surge in late orders. Within the plant, the flow was just very, very poor. You had product that was just building up, being pushed through the workstations. Some were excessive with WIP, others were just starved for WIP. The operators were wasting a lot of time hunting for the right product. It was taking up a lot of floor space and would result in lost inventory. So here's the current state on one flip chart. We observed it and we measured the key metrics. The length of the material cut, how many orders were completed, the time wasted, and the amount of WIP, and even floor space. Once we had that completed, we could see where we wanted to go. So we created a new standard operating procedure that reduced the amount of WIP entering station 4 to just 150 meters of cut material at any given hour. That was our trigger. And we also built a simple steel frame during the Kaizen event to physically limit the amount of WIP to 1 pallet. We ran 3 experiments, 1 each hour, and we just observed. And the results were remarkable. A 90% reduction in WIP. We tripled the orders completed, and we reduced our floor space by 20 square feet. So it is doable, Chris. These are just some lessons learned with Kaizen events. I think they're all very, very inherent. They're intuitive. And I know we want to keep moving on here, but let me just open it up for any questions or thoughts.
Well, I know we backed up against the clock here. If everybody, I mean, we can stick, or Peter, if you can stick around, I'll leave the Zoom open a little bit if anybody wants to ask any questions or anything. But
sure.
I had one thing. I did some research on some of the attendees. There was one gentleman I looked at, and his name was interesting to me because it's unique. Ortwin Close.
Ah, Mr. Close from Aflac.
But
yes,
it looks like he may have been. He said he was green belt or something, so I didn't know if he was a customer of yours or not. But Ortwin, if you can just share some, if you've had some experience going through the classes or things like that, whatever you want to share.
I can. I'd be happy to. I was fortunate enough to have Peter as an instructor for both the yellow belt and the green belt training. Definitely the things that I remember too out of that class. He's very engaging, dynamic, very interactive. Is the general platform for the course. He also was in tune with our business, so he was able to bring in some real life examples, things that we were familiar with, and definitely enjoyed working through the case studies. It really helped it stick to work through some of the case studies, including the deli case here for the green belt. Definitely very helpful. Would highly recommend that if you haven't taken an organized course. And thank you again, Peter. Definitely enjoyed it and benefited and learned a lot.
Ortwin, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Chris, I hope you got the controls now.
No, I wanted to make sure people knew how to get in touch with you and knew about the classes
yes.
coming up. So you've got those.
Yes, here's my information. And Chris, what I'll do is I'll send you the PDF of this presentation and the article, and you could distribute out to the attendees.
Okay.
And if anyone has questions or comments, let me know. I'm more than happy to answer anyone's.
Yeah, I'd say just, reach out to Peter. He's pretty approachable and can talk you through this. As you can tell, he's got passion for it. So reach out direct. So I appreciate everybody joining in tonight. And again, we've got some other things coming up. Check out apicsatlanta.org for things. We try to do something the third Wednesday of every month. I know this is not Wednesday, but there was something important that happened yesterday. So we opted not to compete with that, but check out our events. And we also promote other events for other chapters around the Southeast. So thank you for participating. Appreciate it.
Peter,
Chris, thank you. And
Thank you.
Thanks to Adam as well.
Yeah, Peter, I was going to say thank you as well. And I learned a lot just from watching this presentation tonight, and really feel this is one of the best PDMs we've had in quite some time, that actually gives you some takeaway for the audience. And yeah, I will definitely be in touch with you in the days and weeks ahead. Love to learn more about everything you presented here today.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And-
everybody. Go ahead.
And
Thank you.
really fast. Peter, you still there?
Ron?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you. And it's also nice to meet another person besides myself who's a true student of W. Edwards Deming. I was a student of his back in the late 80s.
No kidding. Ron, where did you meet him?
I worked at Ford Aerospace, Aeronautics Division in Newport Beach, California, and we had an issue with quality, and Ford Motor Company brought him out. I was in my 20s and he was 87. But not only did I learn a lot, but Chris is going to like this one. I also, through ASQ, do a seminar on Deming's 14 points.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was 14 points. I said 11.
That's
No,
okay.
That's great. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Well, Ron, you've had some very fortunate with that experience.
Very much so. And even though that was back in the late 80s, I remembered all of it, and it really shaped my my career from then on out, all my knowledge. And so it's nice to meet somebody else. You're in Japan with him. I was in Newport Beach. So, but we were trained under him directly. He was old, he was slurring his words, but the meaning was there.
Yes. Golly, I'll probably, you and I need to chat a little bit offline.
Sure.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again, Chris and Adam.
Yeah, you bet.
Really appreciate the time.
Yeah. Also, I did. You talked a lot about a lot of the terms, pokeoke, however you say it. A lot of those things in there. I did I'm a podcaster called with Supply Chain is Boring, and I interviewed Norman Bodek. Norman is he's the person. If you can see this here, he said he's the godfather of lean. But there's a 3-part interview I did with him. He passed away in December. But he talks a lot about these he was actually the person that brought lean as a concept into the United States. So you can check those out if interested.
Nice.
And Deborah Brenner, you made it from Albuquerque. You're there still, or you left? Maybe she left. Well, that's all I've got. Anybody else have questions? Anybody you want to talk about? As I said, part of this is networking as well. I won't end it if we want to do some networking, but all I've got to do is go eat.
Yeah.
All right, Peter. Thanks again for your time. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right.
Bye now.
Adam, you're there? You left. Jordan, you still listening, or you're?